Now let's see what is meant by throughput. Okay, we have already seen throughput, but anyway, let's see one more time. Okay, in accordance with FCFS, SJF, and SRTF, we are just comparing these three. Okay, in order to understand the advantages and disadvantages of each one of them. Fine. Now let's throughput is nothing but number of processes executed per unit time. Okay, which means the throughput equal to number of processes executed divided by schedule length. This is the formula we have seen, and we have also solved some problems, right, to find out the throughput. See, in order to understand it more clearly, which one is better in terms of throughput, which means there are three algorithms named FCFS, SJF, and SRTF. Out of these three, which one has a higher throughput? See, higher the throughput, more efficient will the computer be, right? Which means, in case if a computer is executing 10 instructions per second or 10 processes per second, it is better than a computer which is actually executing 5 processes per second, right? See, this is nothing but the rate, right? For example, it is as good as saying a person traveling 5 km per hour is faster than a person traveling 3 km per hour. Similarly, a processor which is executing 5 processes per second is faster than a processor which is executing 3 processes per second, right? It is actually denoting the throughput is actually denoting the speed. Okay, fine. Now let us assume a practical example. Let us assume there is a boss. Okay, there is a boss who has a worker or an employee, okay, under him. Now let us assume the employee is sitting in a counter, okay, and he says that the boss says to the employee that you will be getting customers over and over and over for infinite amount of time, okay, which means the number of customers which will be coming to the shop is infinite. They can keep on coming at any time, okay, and you need to, and let us assume for satisfying every customer it takes some time, okay. For example, for satisfying one customer it may take just 10 seconds. For example, for satisfying one customer it may take 5 minutes, right, something like that. Now the owner, the boss says to the employee that the amount of money I will be giving you today is, at the end of the day I will come and see you, fine. At the end of the day I will come to the shop again and then I will see the number of customers you have satisfied throughout the day, okay. And he says that you will be getting $1 of money for every customer you satisfy, okay. It doesn't matter how much time you have spent in satisfying a customer, that doesn't matter, but I want the count of the customers to be as high as possible, okay. Which means in case if you have satisfied 5 customers throughout the day, you will get $5 of money. Whereas in case if you have satisfied 10 customers per day, you should be getting $10 at the end of the day, okay. That is what the boss has said, and he has left the shop, okay. Now what should the employee do so that he can get the maximum profit, okay. Let us assume the customers are keep on coming. There are infinite number of customers. There is no bound on only these many customers will be coming, fine. Now what will the employee do? What algorithm he will work for the whole day, which means on what strategy he will work for the whole day so that he will get the maximum profit, okay. That is the question. Let us assume the customers arriving to the employee or the customers arriving to the shop are actually coming in the order of decreasing order of times. Decreasing order of times means, let us assume the first customer who came to the shop needs 100 minutes, okay, 100 minutes from the worker to satisfy his request, okay. The first customer who came to the shop, this is the shop and this is the worker who is sitting inside. Let us assume the first customer who came to the shop needs 100 minutes from the worker to satisfy his request, okay. Let us assume the second customer came and he needs only 50 minutes, okay, and the third customer who came actually needs just 30 seconds, okay. Now will this produce a better throughput? And this keeps on happening, okay. The customers keep on happening. See, how will you get the maximum throughput? That is the first question, okay. How will you get the maximum throughput? If you were in the place of employee, what will you do? You will take the customer, you will pick the customers who will need very less time first, okay. Why? Because you wanted to increase the count of customers satisfied throughout the day, right? How can you increase the count of customers? By satisfying customers who needs very less time. Okay, in case if you satisfy customers with very less time, you can satisfy more customers in the 24 hours time. Okay, in the 24 hours time, which means throughout the day, right? So in case if you satisfy more customers, you will be getting more money from the boss, right? That is what we mean by throughput, number of customers satisfied throughout the day. That's what we mean by that is what we mean by throughput, right? So in case if you use SJF and SRTF, the throughput is much better than FCFS, right? Because FCFS doesn't really see which customer has the least, which customer needs lesser time. Okay, it doesn't see anything like that. It really actually decides depending on the customer who came to the shop first. Okay, and the person who came to the shop first need not be the person with lesser time. Okay, need not be the person who needs lesser time from the worker. Okay, so FCFS throughput will be much lesser than that of SJF and SRTF. That is very clear, right? See, the example which you have seen, actually the customers are nothing but processes. Okay, the customers are nothing but processes, and the worker is nothing but the CPU. The CPU is actually executing processes one by one. Now, in case if the CPU picks processes with the smaller burst times, so in the order of smaller burst times, it will be having better throughput rather than taking bigger processes, right? In case if it takes bigger processes, take 100 minutes, 200 minutes, 500 minutes, comparing to processes with 30 seconds, 20 seconds and 5 seconds, what will happen is the number of processes executed by the CPU after some time will be very less. See, one more assumption is that the number of processes in our computer are infinite. The number of processes will be kept on created, that's for sure. Okay, and so one thing is very sure, SJF and SRTF will have a better throughput, which means SJF and SRTF will have number of processes executed per unit time will be much bigger comparing to FCFS scheduling algorithm. Okay, but now my question is, among SJF and SRTF, which one will have the highest throughput? Okay, see how SJF works. SJF, among the arrived processes, it will pick the process with the shortest burst time, right? It will pick the process with the shortest burst time. But the problem here is, sometimes what might happen is the process which came first might be a bigger process, and once I have started executing the bigger process, then there might arise a smaller process, right? Now in that case, what will happen? The throughput will become lesser, right? Because I'm actually executing a bigger process rather than a smaller process. But in case of SRTF, we don't have that problem. Why? Because while executing, initially the bigger process has arrived, that is fine. Now whenever I'm executing the bigger process, in case if a smaller process came, what I will do is I will preempt this bigger process and then I will keep continuing with the smaller process, right? See, what I will be doing is, let us assume this is a big process and this is just a small process which is arriving a bit later. Okay, now till this point I will be executing the bigger process, that is fine. Now after this I will be checking this time as well as I will be checking this time. Okay, now out of this, whichever gives the smallest time, I will execute that process. That is what SRTF will do, right? So SRTF after this point will execute this process and it will continue with this. Now in case, let us assume if we are checking at this point of time, okay, we are checking at this point of time the throughput will be much higher, right? Which means we have completed one process at this time. Okay, let us assume we are checking at this point of time. At this point of time, in case if we check, we have completed one process. Okay, in case if you are using SRTF, which process? This process. Now in case if you are using FCFS, what will happen is the CPU should have started executing this process and it will not preempt, because FCFS is a non-preemptive scheduling algorithm, and so it might have continued with this process itself. Okay, now whenever I see at this point of time, I will have the throughput to be 0, which means the number of processes completed to be 0. Why? Because FCFS as well as SJF are non-preemptive scheduling algorithm. Once a process has started executing, we will never preempt this process and continue with this process. Okay, whereas in case of SRTF, among all the processes which are available, it will pick the smaller process as long as some other process which comes whose burst time is lesser than that of this process. Okay, once in case if some other process with a lesser burst time arrives, what SRTF will do is it will preempt this process and then it will continue with the smaller process. Okay, but in case of FCFS or SJF, that will not happen. See, one thing is very sure, throughput of FCFS will definitely be less than that of both SJF and SRTF. Why? Because FCFS only considers the process which came to the RAM first. Okay, it will not think about anything. It will not think about shorter burst time. But if we go with shorter burst time, generally the throughput will be much higher. Okay, for example, if you take this example, process P1 has arrived to the RAM at time unit 0. Okay, so among a time unit 0, let us assume we are using FCFS scheduling algorithm. Okay, in case if you are using FCFS scheduling algorithm at time unit 0, only process P1 has arrived, so we will start with 0 and then we will complete it. Then we will continue with P2, then we will continue with P3. Okay, now the throughput will be much lesser. Okay, in case, see, in case, let us see, how will FCFS behave for this is, it will start with P1, fine, it will execute till 2 from 0, then P2 will continue and it will execute till 22, and P3 will continue and then it will execute till 25. Okay, this is what the Gantt chart we will be getting in case if you are using FCFS scheduling algorithm. Now see this, in case if I see the throughput over here, the number of processes completed per unit time, whether I use FCFS or SJF or SRTF will be same. What is that? 3 by 25, right? In case if I execute P3 first and then P2 and then P1 or P2, P1, P3, whatever order I follow, the throughput will be same at this point of time. But I am saying that in case if I am checking at some time around over here or here or here, in case if I am checking at this point of time, then the throughput might vary. Okay, so that is why we have assumed that the number of processes inside our computer is infinite. Okay, now see this here. In case if I would have used SJF, what would have happened? I should have started with process P1, fine. I should have started with process P1, and then I would have continued until time unit 2 from 0, and then I should have picked process P2 because P2's execution time is lesser than that of P1. See, at time unit 2, both P2 and P3 has arrived, and so I will continue with P2 and then I will go till 5, and then I will continue with P3 and then I will go till 25. Okay, this is what would have happened in case if I used SJF. Now in case if I would have used FCFS, what would have happened is quite straightforward. I would have executed in the order of P1 followed by P2 followed by P3, because P1 has arrived before P2 and P2 has arrived before P3. So this could have happened is exactly same, right? We have already drawn it. So from 0 to 2, 2 to 22, 22 to 25. Now see this. Now let us assume I am checking the throughput at time unit say 20. Okay, at time unit 20, in case if I check, the throughput of this is 2, which means the number of processes which I have completed is 2, right, till this point. In case if I see the throughput at time unit 20, what could have happened is here it is just 1, right, in case of FCFS. So definitely SJF's throughput will be much better than that of FCFS. Sorry, SJF's throughput will be much better than that of FCFS. Okay, that is for sure. Now actually the difference between SJF and SRTF is has a better throughput than SJF, because SJF once it has taken the bigger process, it will not preempt and take the smaller process. But in case of SRTF, it will pick the smaller process first, and after that, in case if a smaller process than this arrives to the RAM, we will pick that smaller process, preempting this process. Okay, see, in simple words I can say that throughput will be maximum whenever we are taking processes in the shortest remaining time. Okay, which means the process with the in case if I pick the process with the shortest remaining time among all the processes, our throughput will be maximum. In case if I do for the whole day, which means our worker who was actually satisfying the customer, in case if he picks the customers in such a way that the customers who need lesser time should be processed first, then he will get the maximum profit. Okay, SJF and SRTF both does the same, but the difference is in SJF, once it has started with the bigger customer, once it has started with the smaller customer, in case if a new customer comes whose processing time is lesser than that of this customer, then still we will continue with this customer, because SJF is a non-preemptive scheduling algorithm. Whereas in case of SRTF, though I am executing a smaller process, in case if a further smaller process arrives, SRTF will preempt this and then it will continue this. Okay, so SRTF has a better throughput than SJF has a better throughput than FCFS. Okay, I think this video become very lengthy, but still it is worth noticing it. Okay, in case if I have taken too much of time, so please don't mind that.